The first thing that made me think somebody had been inside my house was the wet footprint on the hallway tile. And even then, I told myself it had to be mine. It was just one print, half of it really, a muddy heel with the tread pattern smudged toward the laundry room. And I stood there staring at it with my grocery bag still hanging from my wrist, trying to remember if I'd stepped in something outside and tracked it in earlier. The problem was I'd left for work that morning in clean shoes, and when I got home it hadn't rained. I actually checked the bottoms of my sneakers like an idiot, right there in the doorway, and they were dry. I lived alone in a rental duplex at the time, one of those narrow two-story units where every room sort of stacked on top of the other, and the walls were thin enough that you could hear your neighbor's dishwasher if the house was quiet. My girlfriend and I had broken up maybe 2 months before that, and she'd moved out, so I'd gotten used to the weird empty house noises and the silence and all that. At first, I thought maybe the footprint was from maintenance or the landlord, except nobody had given notice, and besides, the deadbolt was still locked when I got home. I wiped the print up with a paper towel and didn't think about it again until later that night, when I realized my bathroom medicine cabinet was standing open. That sounds small, I know, but I never left it open, because one hinge was loose, and the mirrored door sagged if you didn't shut it all the way. I remember standing there with my toothbrush in my hand staring at it, and getting that weird prickly feeling in my neck. Nothing appeared missing. Razors, toothpaste, contact solution, all normal. I checked under the sink because I had this stupid thought that maybe someone was hiding in there, even though it was the size of a shoebox. Nothing. I laughed at myself and went to bed. The next morning, I found the back door unlocked. I know for a fact I locked it the night before because I had a habit, deadbolt knob, tug twice. My dad drilled that into me growing up, tug twice. I stood there with my hand still on the knob, trying to think through whether I could somehow have forgotten. And maybe I had. People forget things. That's what I told myself. I started second-guessing everything after living alone. Sometimes I'd leave a cabinet open and swear I hadn't. Sometimes I'd hear something upstairs, and it turned out to be my ice maker dropping cubes. But then over the next week, little things kept happening, just enough that I couldn't explain them cleanly. The thermostat got set down to 64 when I kept it at 72 because the upstairs vent barely worked. A dining chair that I never used was pulled out from the table one morning. My shower curtain was half open when I always talk on this. Closed it because the rod squeaked if you moved it. Tiny things. Things you can convince yourself you're imagining. Maybe I was overthinking it because I was alone too much. Maybe stress. I'd started doing this thing where before leaving for work, I'd mentally note where everything was, just to prove to myself I wasn't losing it. Keys in the bowl, hall light off, bedroom closet shut. Then one Friday I came home around 9:30 after drinks with coworkers, and my bedroom closet door was standing open 6 inches. Not wide, just enough to notice. The light inside was off. And I remember freezing in the doorway because I had specifically checked it that morning. The reason I remembered was because one of the sliding doors stuck on the track and made this scraping noise, and I'd shut it hard enough that my cat, well, ex-girlfriend's cat technically, used to run from the room when she heard it. I didn't own a gun or anything, so I grabbed the metal flashlight from the kitchen junk drawer and went through the whole house trying to act braver than I felt. Under beds, behind shower curtains, basement utility room, every corner. Nobody. Windows all locked, doors still bolted. I barely slept that night. I ended up ordering one of those cheap indoor security cameras online the next day, the kind that sends motion alerts to your phone, and I put one facing the living room front door and another pointed down, the upstairs hallway toward the bedrooms. But part of me expected them to prove nothing was happening and make me feel stupid. For 2 days they did exactly that. Empty house, dust motes, me leaving for work. And on the third night, around 2:14 a.m., my phone buzzed on the nightstand hard enough to wake me up. Motion detected, upstairs hallway. I remember the exact wording because seeing it half asleep made my stomach drop instantly. I opened the app, and the live feed was just darkness at first because the hallway light was off. Then the night vision adjusted, all that grainy green static-looking image, and there was someone standing at the far end of the hallway near my bedroom door. I didn't process what I was seeing for maybe 2 full seconds. It was just a person, a dark shape, tall, skinny, facing the camera. Then it moved, not fast. It turned its head like it had heard the camera click on, and I saw pale eyes and the infrared glare. I don't think I breathed. I rolled off the bed so hard I hit the floor. I ran into the bathroom, locking the door behind me. Even though the hallway in the feed wasn't my current hallway, it was delayed, I think by a few seconds. But panic doesn't care about that. I called 911 whispering so hard my throat hurt and told them somebody was in my house. While I was on with dispatch, I kept staring at the feed. The feed. Figure walked toward the camera slowly enough that I could hear my own heartbeat over everything. Then the image cut out, not froze, cut to black. Officers got there in under 6 minutes. It felt like an hour. They cleared the house room by room while I stood outside barefoot in the yard, in boxer shorts, shaking so hard I could barely hold my phone. Nobody was inside. Every door and window still locked. The upstairs camera had been ripped off the wall and smashed on the hallway floor. The officer actually asked if maybe someone in the house had done it before leaving. I remember just staring at him, because what kind of question is that? They checked the attic too, which I hadn't even thought of, and found nothing except insulation and old wiring. One of them suggested maybe a former tenant had a key. Another said maybe somebody got in while I was home and hid until I slept, then left when police arrived. Neither explanation helped. I changed the locks myself the next morning, even though the landlord said he'd handle it later. Added window alarms, put a chair under my bedroom doorknob at night. For about a week, nothing happened. Then I started hearing the attic. My bedroom ceiling had one of those square access hatches in the hallway outside the bathroom, and around midnight, sometimes later, I'd hear what sounded like a shifting weight above it. Not constant movement, just occasional pressure, a creak, then silence. Old houses make noises, I know that, but old houses don't usually make noises directly over your head, only after midnight. I called the landlord, and he sent some maintenance guy who popped the attic hatch, shined a flashlight around, and said maybe raccoons. He set 2 traps. Both stayed empty. The noises continued. One night I heard what sounded unmistakably like a cough from above the ceiling. A human cough. Muffled but there. I shut off the TV and sat on the couch frozen, listening for it again. Nothing. I nearly called the police again but didn't, because I kept thinking how insane I was going to sound. Hi, I think someone is living in my attic because I heard a cough. Still, I started documenting everything. Dates, times, sounds, motion, alerts. I even sprinkled baby powder in front of the attic hatch one afternoon before work, because I'd seen someone online suggest flour or powder for footprints. When I got home, the powder was disturbed, not obvious boot prints. More like something had brushed through it, leaving streaks and partial marks. My stomach dropped so hard I actually got dizzy. I didn't go inside. I called police from the driveway. This time they took it seriously because of the prior report and the camera footage. They came with a ladder and one officer went into the attic while another covered below. About 30 seconds after he climbed up, I heard him shout for backup. They pulled a man out of my attic. He was maybe late 40s, dirty, rail thin, smelled like sweat and insulation and old clothes. He had been living up there. Not for days, for weeks, maybe longer. They found blankets pushed back into the far corner behind ductwork, empty water bottles, granola bar wrappers, and a ducket. He'd been getting in through the shared crawl space from the neighboring vacant unit. There was a section of firewall in the duplex attic that had been broken through years earlier during some repair and patched badly enough that he could squeeze between units. The police later told me he was probably waiting until I left or slept, then coming down into the house, looking for food, using the bathroom, whatever else. I asked how he got through locked doors and windows, and one officer pointed out the attic hatch had no lock at all, just gravity holding it shut. I should be able to say that's the end of it, that they arrested him and everything made sense after that. But that's not really why I still think about it. What bothers me is what they found in my bedroom closet. Tucked behind a stack of winter coats on the shelf, pushed way in the back where I never would have seen it, was a cheap prepaid cell phone and a spiral notebook. The phone was dead. The notebook had dates written down, my work schedule, the nights I got home late, notes about when lights turned off upstairs, which windows I opened in the mornings, little things like shower 6:10 and takes trash out Tuesday, just pages of observations in cramped handwriting. There was one line written across the top of a page that I still remember word for word because it messed me up more than anything else. Talks in sleep when stressed. I don't know how he knew that. I don't want to know how long he'd been close enough to hear it. Police said he denied writing the notes, denied even owning the phone, then changed his story twice. They charged him with burglary, trespassing, a bunch of things. My landlord let me out of the lease after that. I moved within the week. Packed in daylight with 2 friends present because I refused to be in that house alone again. But here's the part I still can't shake, the part that keeps it from feeling neatly resolved. About a month after I moved, one of my former neighbors from the duplex texted me asking if I'd left anything behind in the attic. I said no and asked why. She told me maintenance had been up there after complaints about noises and found another sleeping area in the opposite corner, hidden behind insulation rolls. Older, dustier, like it hadn't been used recently. Bigger than the first one. 2 blankets, more wrappers, a second bucket. Like somebody else had been up there too, or the same guy had moved around. I don't know. Maybe there's a simple explanation. Maybe he used both spots. Maybe the neighbor exaggerated. I'm not completely sure. But every once in a while I think about that footprint in the hallway. That first one. The single muddy heel print I wiped away because I thought I was being paranoid. And I remember the notebook said he'd started writing dates almost 3 weeks before that, which means by the time I noticed the first sign, someone had already been living over my head long enough to learn my routine better than I knew it myself.